Derek Chauvin gets sentenced for the murder of George Floyd. An Olympic hammer thrower refuses to acknowledge the national anthem, and Make-A-Wish will only grant wishes for vaccinated children. I'm William Hall, and this is The William Hall Show. All right, welcome back to the show. So Make-A-Wish, this is a foundation, an organization that many people have been aware of for many, many years. And they just made an announcement now that they are not going to grant wishes for children that have not been fully vaccinated. So this is in a statement directly from them where they said, quote, "I'm excited to share that Make-A-Wish will resume granting air travel wishes within the United States and its territories, as well as granting wishes involving large gatherings for vaccinated wish families as soon as September 15th, 2021. So this is an announcement made by the CEO from Make-A-Wish there in this recent video. And then he goes on to say, all wish participants, including your wish kid and any siblings, will need to be 2 weeks past completion of either 1 dose or a 2-dose vaccine. So what you're seeing here right now is a situation where this organization that is entirely designed to help out and to really to give comfort for kids, children of all different ages that are terminally ill, that are dealing with some major sickness or something like that in their lives, to kind of to encourage them and to give them their biggest wish, is basically saying, you know, we're not going to do that because of COVID. Because of the fact that you haven't gotten a vaccine for it, if that is the case. Now, the worst part about all of this is, first of all, the fact that I'm assuming that whatever the child is suffering from is significantly worse than what COVID-19 is. So why is it that all of a sudden these people are being ridiculous about the vaccine? So they go on in here, and like I said, this is for critically sick children. And this is a statement that's directly on their site. So this is not my words, it's theirs. And their site says, a wish experience can be a game changer for a child with a critical illness. The organization outlines under its mission statement on the website. This one belief guides us in everything we do at Make-A-Wish. It inspires us to grant life-changing wishes for children going through so much. It compels us to be creative in exceeding the expectations of every wish kid. It drives us to make our donated resources go as far as possible. Most of all, it's the founding principle of our vision to grant the wish of every eligible child. What you're seeing here, though, is, like I said, those are their words, not mine. They're not doing that, though. This is entirely contrary to this statement. Because what you're seeing here is that they clearly can't care about these terminally ill children. They can't, if they're dealing with this stuff with the vaccine right now. Now, notice, by the way, for anybody that's saying, well, you know, maybe they're just concerned about the general well-being of the people that the children are around, ask yourself why they just don't have them tested for the virus. Why isn't that the case? Why is it that they're specifically saying they must have this vaccine to do that? What if one of the children, they're saying, hey, look, you know what? You're dealing with this terminal illness. We don't recommend that you get the vaccine because it could cause for other complications that we're not aware of. Why are they requiring that? Why not just test the children for COVID and just say, okay, they're not positive. Let's move on and let's go ahead and grant their wish as we would normally have done. That's not what they're doing. This isn't a precaution. This sounds like something far worse to me. And it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, this is, at this point, the organization and its reputation have completely gone down the tubes. Because I don't think anybody is going to look at Make-A-Wish the same way ever again after this. Because they're clearly more concerned about something with this vaccine than they are just about testing for the virus or about the children and themselves. They don't care about any of that. I don't think that's what it's ever been about when you really look at the facts around the situation here. And it's really a new low for humanity to literally sit there and say, you know what? Forget these kids. They're not that important. They're not more important than this vaccine for whatever the reason is. Now, this is kind of a offshoot or kind of a side story in relation to this, where the former CEO, by the way, of Make-A-Wish in Iowa had pleaded guilty to charges of embezzling tens of thousands of dollars from the charity as well. That doesn't look good at all when you look at the facts here. So the name of this person, Jennifer Woodley, admitted in a written guilty plea last week that she made unauthorized charges on a foundation credit card, gave herself an unapproved bonus, salary increases, and made false entries into foundation records related to those expenses. Woodley, 40, pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree theft, 1 count of fraudulent practices, and all felonies. So is this a pattern of behavior with Make-A-Wish where you kind of have these shady individuals dealing with this organization? I don't know. But either way, this isn't a very good look in addition to this story either. Once again, these people, I don't understand where they're exactly getting these people from in either one of these situations. But it's not a good look for the organization, and it tarnishes their reputation when you think about it. Because long term, this is not the way that you would want an organization that is supposed to be focused on these sick kids and things like that to wind up being focused now on vaccines and stealing money. Like it's not a good look for any of this. But to me, I think that ultimately you're talking about Make-A-Wish, you're talking about other organizations that are out there that may be doing this. I think people need to wake up and pay attention. What is happening with these organizations? Are they focused so much on more on the vaccine than they are the testing? What is really driving these results? What is driving these news stories at this point? So many of you have been following me for a while, knowing that I have done a decent amount of coverage of the Derek Chauvin trial, as well as the footage and all the evidence, just everything surrounding that entire situation. Obviously, as well, when he was actually charged with all of the 3 different murder charges at the time, I disagree with him when we looked at the actual evidence there. And of course, they convicted him of all of those charges. Well, now just recently, I think as of just this past Friday, they have now sentenced Derek Chauvin to jail at this point. So he actually got sentenced to 22 and a half years. Now, this was actually over the recommendation of a typical case here. And the reason why is for one main reason. Derek Chauvin has no criminal past. None. I mean, there's nothing that he's done in the past that would normally influence or increase the sentence in this situation, but yet they did it anyways. Now, the prosecution actually wanted them to put him in jail for 30 years. So it is less than that, so I'll give him that. But honestly, it's really, once again, this judge being just a pushover to the mob. I mean, there's no way, and I'm sure there are still people that probably rioted as a result of this, but if they given him 10 years, or the recommended sentence was actually 11 to 12 years, by the way. But if they had given him that, I mean, I'm sure that there would have been even more riots as a result of this. And that's really the ridiculousness behind this. Not only just the charges, but the sentencing as well. So the thing is that what you have to look at is, once again, the people being involved in this situation, in this trial, should be ashamed of themselves. This was an entire embarrassment when you look at the very beginning. They should have sequestered the jury. The defense attorney said as much. They didn't do that. They refused to actually deal with the situations, just the high-profile nature of this case. They didn't care. And they knew going into it that it was just going to be a bad idea by not doing so. Now, so in this court filing, by the way, like I said, and this is kind of what I was talking about, Nelson, which was Derek Chauvin's lawyer, said that the court violated Chauvin's right to due process and a fair trial when the court decided against sequestering the jury and granting a venue change. Once again, why are you having the actual trial take place in the same place where the murder of George Floyd happened? That sounds like a pretty bad idea. Like, how are you going to possibly find anybody in this area that hasn't and isn't aware of it, that wasn't already made aware of it? Obviously. The thing is that this is not surprising, though. This sentencing isn't surprising because this entire process from trial to now has been nothing but a big sham. It has been. Ultimately, what we're seeing here is a situation where police officers are getting demonized, thrown under the bus, and the George Floyd situation was the perfect aligning of the stars for Democrats to go ahead and say, police are terrible, they're all bad, and George Floyd was perfect in every single way, which we're going to see in a little bit is clearly not the case. But that's the way that they put this entire trial. So it was a setup from the very beginning. There was no way that he was going to get a fair trial or a fair sentencing. So I'm not surprised at all. Now, there was a few things that took place after this happened now. So, first of all, people were calling for the death penalty in the streets. So I'm surprised that they didn't even wind up doing that. But the autopsy, once again, showed that Chauvin was innocent. And I've talked about this extensively. The video showed that he was innocent. When you looked at the other angle and saw that his knee was never really on his neck, maybe for like a minute or two, but it was actually primarily on his back or upper back and shoulder. When you look at the Minneapolis Code of Reasonable Force, it's in the books. It was literally lawful when you look at the evidence there. And they also proved that the hold was authorized and that Chauvin could have used more force if he actually wanted to, was what a lot of them even said. So you have so many situations surrounding this that shows how big of a sham and joke really this trial was, this entire sentencing. But that's kind of besides the point of this at this point in time, because we're beyond that now. But his mother actually spoke out publicly for the first time about this, and this is a little bit of what she was saying.
I am the mother of Derek Chauvin. I am here to speak on behalf of my entire family. On November 25th, 2020, not only did Derek's life change forever, but so did mine and my family's. Derek devoted 19 years of his life to the Minneapolis Police Department. It has been difficult for me to hear and read what the media, public, and prosecution team believe Derek to be an aggressive, heartless, and uncaring person. I can tell you that is far from the truth. My son's identity has also been reduced to that as a racist. I want this court to know that none of these things are true and that my son is a good man. Derek always dedicated his life and time to the police department. Even on his days off, he would call in to see if they needed help. Derek is a quiet, thoughtful, honorable, and selfless man. He has a big heart, and he always has put others before his own. The public will never know the loving and caring man he is, but his family does.
And honestly, that's pretty hard to watch when you're looking at the circumstances around this, when you're looking at the mother having to watch that. And I know, of course, every situation you're going to have somebody from the family say something sentimental about the situation, but this one really is bad when you look at the circumstances of how her son was treated through this entire trial, knowing that that's not how this guy is, but that's the way that the mob has spoken. That's what this trial was. It was a mob. It's mob rule. It's not the rule of the courts. It's a failed system at this point where as long as enough people on Twitter are angry about it, as long as people are willing to burn down cities and streets about it, it's perfectly fine to go ahead and rule with them. And that's not the way that the law should be upheld. But you also actually did have Derek Chauvin making a statement as well and hinted at more information coming out later.
Mr. Chauvin, this is your opportunity if you wish to give any input to the court. And so I turn it over to you and your attorney.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, due to some additional legal matters at hand, I'm not able to give a full formal statement at this time. But very briefly, though, I do want to give my condolences to the Floyd family. There's going to be some other information in the future that would be of interest, and I hope things will give you some peace of mind. Thank you.
And I'll note that I did read your comments in the pre-sentence investigation as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Now, of course, we'll have to wait and see exactly what those details are. Not entirely sure at this point in time, but I'm assuming that it would have to do with something maybe just showing more information about why George Floyd died. Maybe more factors that were included in that. I've actually seen some reports about the 911 operator being able to do more in that process, not dispatching the proper resources to the scene in time. So there may be more information revolving around this, and we'll have to just wait and see until that comes out. But meanwhile, there have been many different George Floyd statues being put up around the country. And as you would probably expect, because we're in a very divided time politically, people are vandalizing them, of course, because the guy was a legitimate criminal. But the New York Police Department decided that they're going to investigate this as a hate crime. That's the way that they're seeing this right now. Anytime you do something, or graffiti, or whatever it is, a George Floyd statue, it's a hate crime. So we're just going to ignore apparently all of those statues that the left was destroying all over the country last year. Historical figures, and just using racism as the excuse. I mean, come on. I mean, most of it was people that never said anything against black people or anything like that, but they owned slaves at one point in time, so they're automatically bad. Like, I'm sorry, what? Ignoring the amount of black people, by the way, that also own slaves. But once again, the facts don't matter to the Democrats. So what we have to look at here, too, is that we're talking about in New York, where this is taking place, a place where crime has skyrocketed over the last year specifically, like crazy. Yet they're putting all these police resources to figure out what happened to a George Floyd statue? Like, I'm sorry, but maybe your city needs your attention. Maybe the people that are actually dying because of the black community, hence the black community themselves, maybe they need the police officers a lot more than to be investigating this stupid statue. But it's the optics. It's all about the optics here. Now, the thing that we have to be looking at as well is that this is a statue honoring what is a criminal. That's objectively the case. Whether you agreed with how the situation took place with Derek Chauvin and George Floyd or not, George Floyd was a criminal. He was a habitual criminal. He literally held a woman at gunpoint, a pregnant woman at gunpoint with a gun to her stomach. And we're okay putting up a statue of this guy? I don't care what the circumstances are around his death. You're not putting up a statue of somebody like that. That's not what should be happening at all. But that's the way that these things are taking place because they're trying to deify this guy. It's like an idol or something like that. And it's just not right. It's not right when you're looking at the facts surrounding the situation whatsoever. Now, the thing too is that George Floyd's brother decided to speak out on this as well. And he's spoken before, but this time he said something that I think many people would find pretty interesting. Check this out.
Her daughter is walking around, and I know she's in tears every day thinking about her mother. Her mother was killed in point-blank range, shot multiple times. So many different people all around the world who didn't even have this type of technology. I just want to reiterate, not just Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. We need to stand up and fight. Can't get comfortable, because when you get comfortable, people forget about you.
Amen.
So the legend will still live on. George is not here, but
Wait, I'm sorry. Whose lives matter? What did he say? Oh, all lives matter. Wait a minute. Wait. I just have one question. Are we still considered as racist for saying that? Because that's what we've been told for the past year. I mean, that was the big battle last year, was it not? I mean, anybody that says all lives matter doesn't care about black lives, because apparently they don't know what all means in the dictionary. But come on. How is it now that this guy can come out there and say this and nobody on the left has anything to say about that? Nobody has anything to say about that. We've been saying this for a year now, and yet George Floyd's brother decides to come out and say something about it today? Yeah, okay. Well, the thing is, too, is that notice how he's waiting till after Derek Chauvin gets sentenced to bring this up all of a sudden, to make this statement. Now, he could have made this statement last year, but he didn't do it because that's not what it was about. I'm sure somebody probably told him that he shouldn't be talking about it. Now, he can say all lives matter all he wants. He can say it all day long, but it will not matter. There will never be a situation, no matter how wrongful the shooting may be, where a white person that gets shot by any race of a cop is going to be treated like George Floyd was. It won't happen. Even though it has happened, it won't happen. And he doesn't get that. The left doesn't care about it. But it's just kind of an interesting statement coming from the guy that has been all about the BLM thing and then all of a sudden saying something that everyone in BLM hates people saying. So pretty interesting there. Now, the thing too about all of this is that these Democrat-run cities, these different areas like this, have had the worst crime that we've ever seen. It's going up constantly, as we've been seeing before. And the Democrats are constantly trying to use this case, for example, to say that we should defund the police. They've been saying this for the longest period of time now. And so what you wind up with is the situation where the Democrats are obviously the ones trying to defund police. They've been trying to do that in many of these other cities. Some cities actually have done this. Meanwhile, Chris Wallace decides that he's going to say the exact opposite about the Republicans. So it's this conversation that he's having with Representative Jim Banks, where they're talking about this ridiculous COVID bill that they were trying to pass. And he basically tries to say that Republicans are actually the ones trying to defund the police.
But Congressman Banks, let me push back on that a little bit, because in the program that he announced this week, the President said that the central part of his anti-crime package is the $350 billion in the American Rescue Plan, the COVID relief plan that was passed. Take a look at what the President said.
It means more police officers, more nurses, more counselors, more social workers, more community violence interrupters to help resolve issues before they escalate into crimes.
Congressman Banks, you voted against that package, against that $350 billion, just like every other Republican in the House and Senate. So can't you make the argument that it's you and the Republicans who are defunding the police?
Not at all, Chris. I mean, let's go back again and look at the last year and the record of comments that Democrats have made, from Rashida Tlaib, who said that policing is inherently evil.
Sir, respectfully, I heard you make that point, but I'm asking you, there's $350 billion in this package the President says can be used for policing. And let me put up some of the specific things he said.
The point that I'm making is important.
Congressman Banks, let me finish, and then I promise I'll give you a chance to answer. The President is saying cities and states can use this money to hire more police officers, invest in new technologies, and develop summer job training and recreation programs for young people. Respectfully, I've heard your point about the last year, but you and every other Republican voted against this $350 billion.
So first of all, besides Chris Wallace being out of his mind, the thing that he's not even talking about is that the bill was actually trying to just put money in these Democrat-run cities' pockets for community policing. What is community policing, you might ask? That's a great question. Because community policing is basically this big joke that Democrats, for some reason, decide to take seriously, where they say that, hey, you just need people in the community that decide that they're going to step up and just be aware of what's going on. These are the same people that have been making these arguments saying, well, if somebody's robbing a house, just let them. They may need those goods. Because why cause the conflict in the first place? These are the community police people that everybody can band together to stop the crime or something in some area. Meanwhile, ignoring the idea that it's typically the community that is robbing its own community. Especially when you're talking about in the black neighborhoods where the crime rate is very high. It's the community that is the problem. You need a solution that is outside of the community to fix that problem, which would be police officers. Newsflash, but they, of course, aren't worried about all of that. They're focused on this idea of just trying to get rid of the police officers and try to get this community involved in it somehow. Now, this has never been proven to work. On paper, it doesn't work. It's just, if you say it enough on Twitter, then anybody that's a Democrat basically assumes that it's somehow going to work, even though it won't. But the thing is that they're talking about giving money to these cities for that. That's defunding the police. That's not funding the police. So when Biden's sitting there saying, more police, more of this, they could use that. They could use the money for that, but they're not going to. The very people that live in those areas know better. And they're saying, you know what? The person that's the governor in this state or whatever, they don't value the police. They know that. They're probably on Twitter with their own accounts basically talking about how bad the police are, siding with every Democrat policy for that kind of stuff. The people that are there, their constituents, know this, and the crime rates rise. That's why it's so high, because the officials in the area have said, yes, BLM, 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 police bad, police bad, police bad. They say the same thing, and then as a result, the criminals aren't that dumb, and they say, well, hey, it looks like we can get away with whatever we want, and they do whatever they want. This money, there's no guarantee that that money is going to go to policing, and I can assure you that it will not go towards policing. It just won't, which is ridiculous that Biden is assuming that that would be the case, but it won't be happening at all. But that's why Democrat cities have the worst crime. That's why it's the case. So it doesn't mean that Republicans are against funding police. That's not what this is about. It's about him voting and them voting against this ridiculous bill that's doing nothing but bailing out Democrat-run cities again, and then also trying to give them more money and assuming that they're going to use it the right way, and then calling it that Republicans are trying to defund police. Sure. Maybe if the people that are actually in those areas respected the police, actually made statements in support of the police, then maybe that might be the case. But that's not what's happening. So it's just ridiculous. Chris Wallace trying to say whatever he can to try and flip the narrative, but it won't work. So just a quick reminder that I do have a Patreon page where you can donate directly to the show. And if you are listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please remember to leave a review, as it does help the show out. Facebook received a bit of bad news recently when a Texas court actually decided that they could be held liable for the sex trafficking content and people that are on their platform. So this is a pretty interesting argument because it kind of dives into a little bit of Section 230 as well. So basically the report is, it's all based off of this court case where 3 victims of child sex trafficking had sued Facebook in Texas for allowing the recruiters to operate on Facebook the entire time. Now, the Texas Supreme Court ruled against Facebook in a teen sex trafficking case, and the plaintiffs of the case argued that Facebook did not attempt to stop sex trafficking on its platform. Now, of course, Facebook at that point was going to argue that under Section 230, they are not responsible for that it's whatever. Now, the reason why this is important is because we need to look at Section 230. Section 230 is what a lot of these social media companies claim they fall under, right, when the going gets tough for them. When they get pressured about what's on their platform, that's where they go to. Section 230 is basically telling them that they are a platform, and as a result, they are not responsible legally for any of the stuff that takes place on their platform. That all they do is provide a space. They cannot be held liable for the things that those individuals put into that space or how they use that space, but that they're just simply providing the space. And as a result, they're not into moderating it and changing it and doing these things, right? Because otherwise, if they were a platform that is changing and moderating and telling users what they can and cannot have on it, that's not really a platform. That's the other part of Section 230, where it's saying that they are a publisher. They are somebody that is moderating their content to a degree. The thing is that didn't work for them this time. And the reason why this is important is because you have to look at what Facebook has been doing over the past few years with conservatives. Let's look at what's going on. They banned Trump from Facebook, Instagram, all these other platforms. You look at all of the other conservative voices, even my own Facebook page, they have censored, they have put all these disclaimers up. They will ban people for talking in a negative light about the vaccine. They will ban people about talking negatively about or talking about the election in a way that they disagree with. We know what they're talking about there. They do all of this on a daily basis. Yet they allow sex trafficking recruiters? How in the world is that okay for Facebook to get away with here? And that's why this is such an important case, because Facebook wants to say, well, we're not responsible. We're just a platform. We're just providing them to do things. I mean, if they want to do something bad, let them do it, right? Well, they don't have that same mentality towards Facebook, towards conservatives, towards people that are dealing with election integrity, for the people that are talking about the vaccine in a way that they disagree with. That's not the same approach they have to it. They have an entirely different approach. So what you're seeing is the hypocrisy of Facebook being literally exposed here, where they're putting so much attention on vaccines and misinformation and election this and election that they're allowing for sex traffickers to operate on their site, recruit people into it, and get away with it. And Facebook does nothing about it because they're too busy trying to tell you that you can't say that someone else won the election instead of someone else. Does that sound crazy to anyone else, or is it just me? But that's the problem you're having. And Facebook is a culprit in all of this. So honestly, this is exactly what they deserve. I'm glad that this got pushed through the way that it did, because it exposes their hypocrisy, and because honestly, this stuff needs to stop. That's one of the biggest real pandemics going on out there right now is sex trafficking, but nobody wants to talk about it. Very few people are dealing with it on any serious basis because of things like this, where you just can't get good information on it anymore. I'm not one to particularly follow the Olympics very closely, but to be honest with you, this one was a story that I had to kind of look into because it was pretty crazy. So this is from an Olympic hammer thrower. Her name is Gwen Berry. Now this is a black lady that was actually competing in the Olympics here, and during at least the trials to do that. And they played the national anthem while she was standing on one of the platforms, and she decides that she's going to turn away from the flag entirely. So Gwen Berry, who qualified for her second Olympic team during the trials, shifted to face the stands rather than the flag before holding up a black shirt that read "Activist Athlete." Now already I have a problem with this shirt because, number one, you're pretending in the first instance that you can be an activist and an athlete. This is exactly what Colin Kaepernick got wrong, okay? Where he was doing all this stuff, trying to behave and act like he was so good. Here's the problem. Colin Kaepernick sucked at the game. That's the truth behind the situation. He was bad at the game, but he wanted to sit there and say, "Ooh, look at me. I'm kneeling for the flag. Or in the national anthem. And look at me. Look at all this attention I'm getting." Meanwhile, dude, when you're on the bench, nobody really cares. Okay? That's the problem. Is that these people are literally trying to say, I feel like they're only being an athlete so that they can be an activist. Because as an activist, nobody's going to care about these idiots. But on the main stage, everybody can go talking about them. So here's a picture of what she looked like standing on the stage like an idiot. Like somebody that doesn't belong in the United States, to be honest with you. And definitely doesn't deserve to be competing to represent the United States of all things. But the thing is that she made a few statements here, and this kind of encompasses the entire mindset of this person here. So she said, "I feel like it was a setup, and they did this on purpose." Berry said that the anthem being played, and when it was played, she said that "I was pissed, to be honest. They had enough opportunities to play the national anthem before we got up there." Berry said in Oregon, where the trials were being held, "I was thinking about what I should do. Eventually, I stayed there and I swayed. I put my shirt over my head. I didn't really want to be up there," she said. "Like I said, it was a setup. I was hot. I was ready to take my pictures and get into some shade." Here's the thing. Here's a crazy idea. Maybe I don't know. You tell me. Don't compete in the Olympics. Don't compete in the Olympics. It doesn't get easier and more simplistic than that. If you've got a problem being up there, why are you doing it? Oh, I know why. Because you're looking for nothing but attention. Meanwhile, you're sitting up there at third place like an idiot that got the worst score, and now you're holding this shirt over your head while the national anthem's being played. Dude, it really just astonishes me. It really does. It really does. So the thing is that if you don't like it, go somewhere else. Oh wait, you won't go somewhere else because you know that you're never going to be able to go to a country that would ever allow a player to go somewhere and represent them that refuses to acknowledge their national anthem. That is okay with their player getting up there saying it doesn't represent me. Try it in another country and see what happens. Try it, please. And don't go to Africa, okay? Get up there and refuse to go along with any kind of patriotism towards Africa. Please try that. Indulge me in it. I'd love to see it happen. But you're not that stupid, are you? That's the thing. And that's why she won't actually do it anywhere else. And that's the problem I have with these people. It's nothing but fake attention, fake outrage, living your life trying to be a victim, and that's it. It's nothing but a professional victim. And the thing that gets me about all these woke athletes, if you want to even call them that, is that they're trying, like I said, to be an activist with this. Like, all you need to do is make the sport about a sport, instead of trying to use this as some catalyst to push some racial mess. So she goes on and she made a few more statements saying, but I don't really want to talk about the anthem because it's not important. The anthem doesn't speak for me. It never has. Sure, okay, whatever. So she goes on to say, my purpose and my mission is bigger than sports, Barry said. I'm here to represent those who died due to systemic racism. That's the important problem, or the important part. That's why I'm going. That's why I'm here today. Okay, please indulge me. Name one person that's been killed by systemic racism. I'll wait. I have all day. They never say who has been killed by systemic racism. They just want to keep talking about it. They just want to keep saying it. And please do not talk about George Floyd, because that has nothing to do with a system. Even if you believe wholeheartedly that everything that Derek Chauvin did was entirely wrong, where's and what system was involved in that? I'll wait. But that's not what's happening. And we know this. The problem is that a lot of these woke athletes, Democrats in general, are going to talk about the systemic racism, but they have nowhere to point to. The only thing that right now is in our laws that's really systemically racist is actually affirmative action. I mean, that's going on right now. Giving black people or just general minorities and whatever it is, an easier pass to get into college, that's discrimination. It is. But they don't view it that way because they don't apply the term equally across the board. Something that Democrats don't know anything about, especially when we're talking about equality. They really don't. It's equity. That's why they've changed it. It's not equality anymore. All right, so this episode's TikTok liberal is a teacher that is talking about different parts of history and how apparently she believes that she's on the right side of history.
I feel like people don't think enough about what future generations are going to think about them. And I don't mean like millennials worrying about what Gen Z thinks about side parts. There is a right side of history and a wrong side of history. We are always living through history, and I think a lot about what I'm going to say to my son and what I'm going to say to my grandkids when they come home and they say, Mom, where were you in 2020? There is going to be a right side of history and a wrong side of history. And there's not like a special place in history for people who say like, nah, I don't do politics. I don't like to pick a side. I stay out of it. When you stay out of it, you're on the wrong side.
So if you're listening to this on the audio version, what you have is this lady she's showing a few pictures in the beginning portion there where she basically says, okay, here's the right side of history and here's the wrong side of history. And both of these events were from the past. What she was showing at that point was the people that were standing kind of with Martin Luther King, and then in the other part were the segregationists, the people that didn't want for segregation to effectively end, okay? And then she goes on and she says, well, and that separates this now from this new right side of history, even though we're in the present day, where she basically says the people with BLM are on the right side, and then she literally just shows a Trump rally as the wrong side. Like, okay, sure. Well, the problem is that she's missing out on a few details, a few very important details in this matter. The first part about this is that the Democrat Party were the ones that were the segregationists. They were the ones that were the party literally of the KKK. She doesn't want to pay attention to that because obviously looking at this video, she is the Democrat, right? And by the way, nothing's changed. Maybe I'll save that for another episode or something where I kind of go through why people think that the parties flipped. They didn't flip. Okay, when you look at the core tenets of each of the parties, they're still very much the same as they were in the very beginning. By the way, Republican Party at that time founded by black Republicans, just so you know. But that's the history that they don't want to pay attention to. The thing is that she doesn't really go into all of the details of these situations. The fact is that on both, whatever those right and wrong sides may be that she wants to look at, everybody thinks that they're right. Okay, that's the thing that she leaves out. The segregationists weren't like, in the KKK, weren't doing what they were doing because they were like, oh, well, we know we're on the wrong side of history, but we're going to do this anyways. That's not what they were doing. They did what they did because they thought they were right. So, and the point is that everybody thinks that they're right, no matter what they're doing. She thinks she's right. We know and believe that we're right. But everybody thinks that what they're doing is correct no matter what the situation is. How do we know what we're doing is actually right? Because we have to look at the actual facts of the situation. The facts always become the biggest and most important thing. Those are the things you cannot ignore. When she's showing these things like BLM and saying that that's the right side, how is that the right side when BLM, the foundation itself, the organization itself, has raised $90 million, of zero of which has gone to the black community? Hold up, it doesn't end there. The co-founder left after a report came out that she took all this money, presumably from BLM, and bought $3.5 million worth of houses since then, and then resigns. How is that okay? How is that the right side? By the way, everything that BLM stands for today is counter to that of Martin Luther King. Do not think that those things align. Everything Martin Luther King feels and believed at that time is counter to what Democrats are pushing today through BLM. The mere statement that people should be judged on the content of their character, not the color of their skin, is counter to CRT, BLM, and everything there. He believed black people could achieve anything. They just needed these obstacles out of their way. BLM saying, you're forever oppressed if you're black. There's no way out. There's no way out. They're not preaching solutions. They're just talking about problems that apparently are these phantom problems, really, because they don't really exist. That's where BLM is today, by the way. So don't get thinking that for some reason you're just on the right side because you think you're on the right side. You don't know that. You really don't. And I firmly believe that you're not on the right side, because when you're looking at the actual facts around the situation, what you're looking at is everything in this premises of BLM is actually all built on a lie. The whole thing is. And the fact is that the nature of liberalism in and of itself is thinking that they are doing good when they are really, in fact, doing harm. I mean, all of them do this. It's all of these, especially white liberals, that think that they are doing so much good in the world by posting a black square on Instagram, or talking about BLM, or putting their pronouns or something in their bio on Twitter. They think they're being so righteous in this action when they're not. They're contributing to the very problem that they're trying to solve. In the same breath, they're the same ones that will hurl racial slurs at me simply because I disagree with them. And yet we're going to call them the right side. I'll pass on that. This lady's crazy. Liberalism is a mental disorder. This lady is clear of it. She should not be a teacher. She shouldn't be teaching any history or any students whatsoever, but that's the way that they behave. That's the way they don't know any better. That's the Democrat handbook in a nutshell, is to believe what it is that they're telling you no matter what. Don't look at the facts. Don't ask for the facts. Just believe it. Just go along with it and just teach it. And if you feel like you're right, you're right. You can't be objectively right in a movement or in the Democrat Party where they're basically saying, you know what, whatever you want to be is, you should be proud of it. You're right in whatever it is that you want to believe. This is the same party, by the way, that talks about my truth as if that means something. Okay? I mean, your truth has nothing to do with the truth. And nobody, by the way, in the future, when looking at the past, cared what such and such as their truth was. It doesn't matter to them. What really matters is the actual truth behind the statements that these people are making, the reality that is there, not what fantasy world they want to live in, where men can be women and black people are ultimately oppressed all the time and they can't get out of this situation. That's not the world that I live in. That's not the world that we want to live in. But that's the way that the Democrats view this entire world. That's their worldview. It's their belief. So with all that being said, I thank you for watching or listening to this episode. I'm William Hall, and this is The William Hall Show.